Prince Andrew, still under investigation here in the United States and now even in the UK. I want to go through this article because the Chief Commissioner, her name is Cressida Dick over there in the UK. She is now hinting that they are going to be doing an investigation into Prince Andrew. Now, the title here, the headline from Neon Nettle says that it kind of makes it sound like they're going to be doing something, but we're going to listen here a little bit more closely. So we're going to look at the story. Earlier in the week, we talked about Prince Andrew. We know he has sort of been involved with the Epsteins for a long time. We had that very awful picture of him kind of hugging that 17-year-old girl, allegedly in a hotel with Ghislaine Maxwell that was provided by Giuffre Epstein. Well, a long time has elapsed. The story is that Prince Andrew slept with a underage woman who was trafficked for the purposes of sex and then covered the whole thing up. Fast forward to today, Virginia Giuffre filed a lawsuit in the United States, and we've been asking ourselves here in this country, is this going to uncover anything about this extended conspiracy that was going on in the highest order, the highest levels of our government, the UK government, probably many other world governments involving Epstein, involving these trafficking of very young underage girls for the purposes of sex? Are we ever going to get to the bottom of this? Giuffre Epstein was incarcerated. His case was going to be moving forward. And then conveniently, everything went wrong. Giuffre Epstein clearly didn't kill himself, but ended up dead anyways because some guards were asleep, some cameras were off, and the whole thing fell apart. So many of us were saying, dang it, we wanted some answers on this. Ghislaine Maxwell also got arrested. She was in hiding for some bit. And now many people are looking at this new lawsuit and salivating, saying, hey, maybe we're going to get some new information from this Prince Andrew. So now, Virginia Giuffre filed a lawsuit. The lawsuit is well underway, but the question that has been on everybody's mind is, so what? This is the Prince of the UK. He is the Duke of York, and he is not going to respond to anything that the U.S. prosecutors or a U.S. civil court demand of him. So now, over in the UK, they are telling us that they are also going to be doing an investigation. This is this woman here. Her name is Cressida Dick. She is an investigator, and she was on an interview. You can see here she's the commissioner from the Metro police officer, says that Prince Andrew is in fact under investigation, according to the UK police. She said, quote, no one is above the law. They're acknowledging that UK authorities are now investigating allegations that he raped a teenager who was trafficked to him for sex by convicted pedophile Giuffre Epstein. A lot of really terrible words in that sentence. London Metro Police Commissioner has confirmed. So she says here that they were, quote, looking into the allegations, right? So this headline, this article sort of makes it sound like they're actually doing something. Let's listen in on the interview where these clips came from. Looking into and, quote, no one is above the law. So this lady, Commissioner Cressida, she was over here on this show. Let's listen in on how she is explaining what they were doing.
Have you seen the testimony or notes from the Duke of York's Royal Protection Team pertaining to the night of the allegation he strenuously denies what took place in a London apartment?
So I really am not going to comment any further, Nick.
Someone's seen those notes.
I'm not going to comment any further.
Come on.
Is he above the law, the Duke of York?
No one is above the law.
So you're reviewing this case?
Absolutely. It's been reviewed twice before. We work closely with the CPS. We are, of course, open to working with authorities from overseas. We will give them every assistance if they want to, if they ask us for anything within the law, obviously.
And as a result of New York.
And as a result of what's going on, right. I've asked my team to have another look at the material. Okay. No one is above the law.
All right. So there you go, right? The first headline, oh, yeah, we're looking into this, and an investigation is underway. But then you actually listen to the interview, and it's more like, I'm not going to comment on this, dumb. You already asked me about this. I'm not commenting on it. And listen, no one is above the law. We are looking into it. We've already looked into it twice. Hello. And we'll look into it again. Okay, so you know what that means. It means we looked into it. We'll look into it again because everybody's asking us to. But we're going to find what we found the last two times when we also didn't find anything, probably intentionally because we didn't actually look or do anything. We're going to do that again. So I guess that's a good headline for the UK government. Yeah, we're looking into this. We're going to go investigate one of our own. But not really. All right, now this is, of course, causing some people in the United States to say, well, what the heck is going on here? Because this is one of our citizens that got sexually assaulted by your prince. And we have a strong interest in getting to the bottom of this, given the fact that Epstein is no longer with us and Maxwell is still in custody. So Giuffre, her lawyer, came out. His name was David Bois. We already talked about him earlier in the week. Said that the Duke is going to have to answer questions. Said the court process now is going to compel him. If he were to try to ignore the court the way he's ignored us, there would be a default judgment entered against him. That could be enforced in the United States or in England or elsewhere in the world. So I don't think he's going to ignore the court. And as a result, he's going to be held to account. So I read that and I thought, okay, well, that might be true, right? If they do file a lawsuit and he doesn't respond, yeah, maybe the court does issue a default judgment. It means you just sort of lose, right? Sometimes you think about this in terms of financials. If you have a bill to pay or a credit card bill and you just say, well, I'm going to pay $100 a month until I pay down the $1,000, and you stop making your payments and they say, well, you've defaulted on your loan. Now the whole $1,000 is due plus the rest of the interest. Right. And so that's sort of, if you're not going to play, they're just going to find in default against you. You just lose by default. We gave you a subpoena, we gave you a summons, and you got notice that this lawsuit is taking place over you, and you didn't show up to court. Therefore, you lose because you had proper service, you had proper notice that this was happening against you, and you didn't show up. So now you lose. So is that going to happen here? And that's what this attorney is saying, that there could just simply be a default judgment, right, against him. Well, the first question, this is kind of jumping over a couple very important preliminary issues. The first question is, does the court have any jurisdiction over the prince anyways in the first place? We talked about this a little bit earlier. The defense attorneys say that they do. I'm sorry, the plaintiff's lawyers, the people who are representing Virginia Giuffre, they say we have jurisdiction over him. Why? Because New York has a long-arm statute. If you come into New York and you try to do business in our state, which includes sexually assaulting young underage women, that means that you are availing yourself of our laws. And that gives us jurisdiction over you. Because Prince Andrew, you were here raping 17-year-olds, you are acquiescing to our laws. That gives the court jurisdiction over you, and you can't just hide out in New England. And so if the court interprets it that way and says, yeah, if this is a valid lawsuit, we agree he was here, we agree that the court does have jurisdiction over the prince, then they could enter a default judgment. But what happens if the courts don't find that they have that jurisdiction? If there's some sort of immunity, if the idea that these two totally separate systems of government where you have a separate prince of a foreign power, there are different ways that these things work. What that attorney was talking about may be totally appropriate if if a lawsuit takes place in New York and the defendant is also in New York, it's pretty easy to enter a default judgment. But here, we're talking about a foreign prince, and so it gets a little bit more complicated. I was looking into how this works, and I want to talk about something called a Mutual Legal Assistance Treaty, which would be this agreement between the U.S. and the U.K. to engage in an information sharing sort of a cooperation agreement. Is that something that is possible? Well, we know that currently there are some tensions about this between the two countries. The Independent is reporting that Prince Andrew and the refusal to talk to Epstein's investigators is straining relations between the UK and America. Fears over the issue of the Duke of York could affect wider efforts to collaborate in the future on high-profile cases. U.S. authorities are growing increasingly frustrated with Prince Andrew's failure to cooperate into their probe into the network surrounding Jeffrey Epstein. It's exacerbating tensions between Washington and London. But that's okay, right? He's a prince, so they get to jerk everybody around, I guess, just like our bureaucrats here do. People familiar with authorities' investigations into Epstein's business affairs told The Independent that the lack of information sharing had caused a diplomatic strain. They said in a new civil case that was brought by Virginia Giuffre, alleging that Duke of York sexually abused her is going to add further strain over this issue, along with the prosecution of Maxwell, set to go on trial later this year. There are fears that this issue could sour broader efforts to collaborate on other cases, and the prince has specifically denied the allegations, of course. So the next question, sort of logically, okay, so if there are tensions here, how does this work? How do all of these things get sorted out? So I went over to the Criminal Resource Manual at the DOJ website, and I looked this up. This is what's called a treaty request. You'll notice it says here, a Mutual Legal Assistance Treaty. It has the force of law. This is all a bunch of sort of manual stuff, so we're not going to spend much time on it, but it is an agreement, right? If you have somebody in a foreign country, you've got somebody here domestically, and you sort of go through this process where you enter into this mutual legal assistance of treaty. It has the force of law. It says it's faster and more reliable than other mechanisms. You consult with the office. You determine whether the U.S. has an MLAT with the country. So the U.S. most obviously has one of these with the UK. But the question is, can they enforce this? Can this result? Can the U.S. government and the UK government enter into one of these MLATs? It's a mutual legal assistance treaty so that they can share information about this, so that the US government, through the US court system, through the civil lawsuit that was filed by Virginia Giuffre, can they start communicating some of those interrogatories, some of those requests for depositions through the MLAT over from the U.S. government to the U.K. government. It'll go through their legal system, and then they'll respond accordingly, right? It's sort of like a translator. You go to Google Translate English to Spanish. Well, you need that between the two different countries and the legal systems. And so we have an MLAT process, which is something I'm learning about, that is used as a mechanism to enable this to happen. Well, that sounds pretty reasonable. Sounds good. Okay, well, we've got a system now that we can use. Maybe the U.S. can get Prince Andrew to come over here and sit for a deposition or provide some more information about this. The only problem with this, of course, is that they already went down this route and he said, get bent. We're not going to be complying. So this article I found was from last year. Just a little bit over a year ago, on June 8th, 2020, they tell us that U.S. prosecutors back then, you remember this, were sort of on season 2 of the Epstein Saga, because during season 1, Jeffrey Epstein was working his way through the courts. Now, Ghislaine Maxwell is working her way through the courts, and we have a new addition, a new appearance of a character. Virginia Giuffre is also filing a civil complaint. So now we have this 1 year ago, when we were in season 1 going through this with Epstein, that it says advisors to Britain's Prince Andrew denied on Monday that he was refusing to cooperate into a Justice Department probe. This was after U.S. prosecutors back then, 1 year ago, made a rare request through a treaty with Britain to secure testimony from the prince. So they tried this. Prince Andrew's public relations advisors, they released a 2-page statement saying that the department, the DOJ under Trump, wasn't targeting the royal as part of its probe. The statement added that the prince has on at least 3 occasions offered his assistance. A person familiar with the matter said that the Justice Department had made an application under a mutual legal assistance treaty that could lead to Queen Elizabeth's second son being compelled to make a statement in a British court if he doesn't cooperate with the investigation. So now, naturally, I looked up after did anything happen with this? No, of course not, right? Jeffrey Epstein is now dead, and the inquiry that is surrounding that line of questioning is now kind of moot, right? The case against him is moot. So what do U.S. prosecutors need from the prince now that Jeffrey Epstein's dead, now that there's no criminal case going on against him? Nothing. So that whole thing just kind of evaporated into thin air, even though it was being tried. So now that we have some new questions being asked about this, we go back to the Independent. They tell us that these probes that are taking place now are significant. We're talking once again about the back and forth between the U.S. and the U.K. over these issues, about why they're not cooperating on the Prince Andrew stuff. Says these probes are significant not only for the legal proceedings related to Epstein, but also to those around Maxwell and her ongoing charges. It's also alleged that multiple authorities are seeking details of flights of the Duke of York that he used to visit Epstein, the different range of locations, so that they can understand how people may have traveled into and out of his orbit. And we talked about that earlier in the week. We had that map with the flights that were flying all over the place, right? All over the country, all over the world, really. It just looked like this, right? Different flights all over the place. The authorities' interests are understood to include multiple trips by the royal to his island, Little St. James, as well as Florida and New York, where he had his other properties. Last year, prosecutors in the Virgin Island alleged that Epstein abused hundreds of young women. The frustration over the Duke of York's lack of cooperation is said to be amplified by the fact that it appears unlikely that the royal would be extradited, right? Nothing's going to happen. His cooperation would therefore be a matter of bolstering diplomatic relations and sharing any information which could help to avoid the future trafficking of young women and girls. So they don't care about any of that, right? It's all, they can go, he can get out there in front of the cameras. Oh, I care about women's rights, right? Just like Cuomo did. No, I never meant to do those things, but you did for many years. Everybody knew that you did them. And so all of your bloviating about how much you care about women and how much you care about everybody who's been the victim of male, aggression is all BS. We know that. We can see it. Same thing goes on with this guy, right? Goes out and gives an interview. Oh, yeah, we're going to help, blah, blah, blah. All show for the cameras. Soon as the pedal hits the metal, as they say, gone with the wind. All right, so we know. We'll see if anything happens there with the prince. I highly doubt it. Let's switch gears and do a quick recap on what's going on with Ghislaine Maxwell's case. Here is the docket from the last time that we looked at it. You'll notice that not a lot of activity, actually. We have a couple letters that were sent back and forth, and so I want to show you some of the things. In particular, we're going to look at this order real quickly, not spend a ton of time on it because it's somewhat interesting. But let me give you some background on this. So we know that historically, previously, there was a back and forth about an op-ed that was written here. Remember when this guy wrote this? This was written by David Oscar Markus, and he said, Bill Cosby is free. Ghislaine Maxwell should be free too. We talked about that. And he wrote this. He said, look, it's kind of the same thing. You know, Bill Cosby, what they did is they kind of entered into this non-prosecution agreement with him, said, we're not going to prosecute you. Then Bill Cosby started talking, said some things that incriminated him, and then they prosecuted him. Now, what David Markus is saying here, similar thing happened with Maxwell. Epstein had this non-prosecution agreement that was supposed to insulate everybody in his orbit, which would have included Ghislaine Maxwell, and therefore she should be immune to that. That's what his argument says. Well, the U.S. government didn't like that. They did not appreciate that he wrote an op-ed, and so they submitted this document on July 1, saying that he violated this. You're not supposed to give extrajudicial public statements by attorneys who are on the case. And so they wanted the government to order Mr. Markus to comply with Rule 23.1, which is a local rule, saying, don't stop it with your running your mouth. Okay, stop talking about this case. You're not allowed to do that. And so the court came out and they issued this order. This is kind of the really only interesting thing that's been going on lately here with this case. But it says the government has moved for an order asking that David Markus comply with the rules. He wrote an op-ed and authored an opinion on the merits of the case. And they say, Markus said, well, I'm not really a lawyer with the case. That was his defense. And they say, yeah, you are. You're plainly a lawyer associated with the case. Your formal representation involved matters handling at least one pretrial issue, including bail determination. So you don't get to use that defense like, well, I'm not her official lawyer, therefore I can write whatever I want. You can't do that. Also, it said that describes in different documents describe him as Maxwell's appellate counsel. And so the court is just going through here and saying, no, you are her lawyer. And so you can't make that argument. And he says, well, if I was her lawyer, I'm still not subject to the rule because I don't currently represent Maxwell. Judge says, no, not really. Nothing in the rule limits its application to lawyers who have formally entered a notice, and so it all applies to you. Such is the case with Ms. Markus's role. He says Ms. Markus attended a proceeding on her behalf, helped with the pretrial bail determinations, and so on. Therefore, he is ordered to comply with the rule. The government didn't ask for any discipline here. They just want him to not write more stuff, right? And the court says that this is done to make sure that the public dissemination of the information does not interfere with the trial. So we have a new order here from Judge Allison Nathan. Says, now, going forward, Mr. Markus and all lawyers associated with the pending case are now clearly on notice that their conduct falls under the purview of 23.1. This goes for everybody, the judge says. You must take care to protect the right to a fair trial by an impartial jury. So you can't go out there and start saying things that might make the jury impartial. The court is cognizant that criminal matters heading toward trial are especially sensitive to extrajudicial statements. Do you remember all of that extra sensitivity back during the Derek Chauvin trial? I sure don't. Do you? Probably not. All those associated with this case must act to ensure the case is tried solely in court, or else they think that being deemed responsible is undermining the integrity. All right, so there we go. Any further failure to comply with this, if you're talking out of turn, you are going to be subject to attorney discipline. So no more talking now. In the Ghislaine Maxwell case, so not a huge update out of there, but we'll see what happens. This whole thing is just a ball of yarn. And we'll see if we get any answers on it. We want them, and we're going to continue to cover the case. So let's take a look at some questions, see if anybody's chiming in over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Here we have a couple. Let's see who this one is. I'm Not Gas says, Rob, I think you're being a little too optimistic with your hope in alternative systems. We've already seen these companies collude with everything possible to remove people's voices. They ban them off social media. Payment processors refuse to service alternative social media. Hell, Amazon will refuse to host their servers. Cloudflare will remove their DDoS protection. Even after all, the FBI can seize your crypto. Yeah, you're right about that, right? I am optimistic about it. I might be overly optimistic about it, but I think that it's a good hedge against collapse and failure in the older system, right? I'm not somebody who says abandon the old system, but I am certainly saying, well, look, if you're going to be investing your time, if you're going to be sort of trying to change something, maybe your ROI is better used in some of these alternative systems, right? And we'll see where it goes. You can see that I'm sort of doing that right now, right? I've got one foot in each bucket. We're on YouTube, we're on Facebook, we're on Rumble, we're on Locals. And we'll see. And, good things are happening, right? Rumble and Locals, by the way, they just announced a partnership. So all of the content is sort of going to be integrated together. So I got really lucky that I just happened upon those two and started making those my backups, and they were going to work together. And so we'll see. I think that there is going to be a lot of growth. I think that it is very evident that people are wanting alternative information. And I'm pretty optimistic that they're going to find it and that people are going to be willing to get out there and deliver it. It may take 10 years. It may take 20 years. I don't know, right? Amazon, Google, Facebook, these are 20-year-old companies. It might be a 20-year thing. We'll see. We have another one here that's not loading. All right, here we've got Sgt Bob says, I've done a lot of reading about the royal families. There were many affairs and, quote, relationships. Bloodlines are not clear in many cases. Not that I condone Prince Andrew, but the teenager was 17, and whatever this is alleged to have occurred will involve whatever the, quote, age of consent was at that location. Yeah, it's a good point. And if that was in London, I don't know what the age of consent is there, right? Look, and I highly doubt that it was just, one 17-year-old, even if it was, right? Even if it was legal and it's the prince and he shouldn't be trafficking in paid sex with 17-year-olds, that's still a problem, even if it was maybe legal in the UK. I don't know, right? I don't practice law over there. But whatever was happening with Epstein was gross and horrendous regardless. We have TOS Forever says, isn't Prince Andrew guilty? Must prove his innocence. Unlike the US, innocent must prove guilty. Do you think the picture came from Hunter's laptop? It's a good question. Hunter's laptop apparently is in the hands of the Russians, so maybe they, hacked something with those images. I don't know. But I don't know how the UK system works, right? I don't know what the process looks like over there. Candidly, I really don't know what it is. So I'm not sure what he's going to go through. Probably nothing, though, because he's royalty, and nobody touches royalty. Even in the United States, we have our own version of that. We have ThunderSeven says it's a civil case, not a criminal one, so the police can't march in and arrest him. It's up to Randy Andy to respond to the lawsuit. If he's smart, he'll just pay $2 million to Virginia to stop more smut coming out against him. Remember that Ghislaine can make a plea deal, and she knows all his dirty secrets. Well, yeah, I mean, Ghislaine, she should be on high alert right now because we certainly don't want her to kill herself, just like Jeffrey Epstein did. Jeremy Matrides here says, technically speaking, the statement that no one is above the law is false. The Queen is above the law. They have some interesting rules. Quote, though there's an extensive list of rules and regulations members of British monarchy are required to follow, the royals are also permitted to break a number of rules and laws that would land everyday citizens in the big house. Is that a thing? I really don't get the British monarchy. I really don't get it. I had somebody explained it on a podcast one time as, their version of the Kardashians or something like that. Well, you have the Kardashians and we have the royalty. And I thought, we're not proud of that. Are you proud of that? I'm not proud of that. Queen owns England. The prosecutor is called the Crown. The Queen doesn't need a passport. The Prince is a royal. The Queen can pardon him. There you go. There you go. It's pretty simple. They're above us. They're above the rest of us. They get to do what they want. We don't. And it is everywhere. They just happen to have old world titles like Queen and Prince and all of that stuff. We just have, president, senator, congressman. Same system, different labels. Peely Wally says, nothing will happen to Prince Andrew. I don't think the British people care too much. America wasn't too good in recent years when Anne Sokalos hit and killed a 17-year-old motorcyclist since she was driving on the wrong side of the road and hit him head on, then fled the U.S. and claimed diplomatic immunity. America was no help in that case, so no way the prince should help the U.S. It'll be brushed under the royal rug for sure. Yeah, and that's a good back and forth, right? I didn't know that. I never heard of that story, but Yeah, if the U.S. is not cooperative to British interests, well, why would they be cooperative to ours? I've said that, I don't like when the U.S. goes around and wags their finger at other people, do our bidding, right? It's insulting to the other countries. When Kamala went down to Guatemala and did that, I'm thinking, what? Who the hell are you to go down there? If you were in my country, if I was a Guatemalan, I'd say, what? Get out of here, lady. You don't know what we're doing here. Get out of here. And so she did, and they continued to immigrate into the country because nobody listened to her. But the point here is the same, right? Countries should be protective of their own interest and their own people, their own population. So if the UK needed help from the US and the US said sorry, well, goes both ways, doesn't it? Maybe they're not going to help us on this one. Wouldn't surprise me a bit. Ghislaine Maxwell's here, says, I am regretting not fleeing the US with millions of dollars in my crypto wallet to a country with no extradition treaty with the US. Now I'm getting beaten. I can't see my lawyer, and my boyfriend, Giuffre Epstein, got suicided. Hashtag Epstein did not kill himself. Even Maxwell knows that he didn't. We all know. Ghislaine also is here, says, I should have fled to a country with no oh, we already got that one. McAfee didn't kill himself either. So McAfee, same comment. John Sesko is here, says, Maxwell should get a pardon. I'd give her 10 minutes on the outside before justice is properly served. Yeah, John, and maybe if you gave her the pardon and you said, we'll give it to you, but you got to tell us everything. Names, locations, phone numbers, addresses, dates, everything. Give you a pardon, and then you're on your own. Good luck. Good luck out there. TOS Forever says Prince Charles had been very active in 2 child protection projects, which is perfect. One for school dropouts and one for hospital care. Might they have pulled the pictures off the Hunter laptop? That was the only one they could show. Ugh. There are some really, really disturbing, troubling photos from Hunter Biden's laptop. That's all I can say. Screw SDNY says, other than the Constitution, isn't treaties the supreme law of the land via the Supremacy Clause? It's sort of the federal government is. Yeah, there's a hierarchy there. And yes, so if the U.S. government, the federal government, enters into a treaty and that is part of something that might be in conflict, then through the Supremacy Clause, yes, that will supersede any underlying state issues, right? The Supremacy Clause gives the federal government one mechanism to exercise supremacy over the states when there are conflicting issues. Also, SDNY trash trying to ensure a, quote, fair trial by suppressing lawyers' First Amendment rights, which is really only to cover up the corruption of the SDNY. Did you know SDNY tried to suppress the speech of Viva Frei and Robert Barnes when they were reporting on the case? No, I did not know that. But that is unacceptable. Those 2 gentlemen are stand-up gentlemen. Offensive. All right, next up we have No Doubt says, the big tech companies are fighting to own your identities, and every time you log in with your Facebook, Gaggle, Peer, Microsoft account, you help them take over. Take your identity back wherever you can, and don't use these master IDs that are connecting you everywhere you go, following you around the internet, everywhere. A couple more we have here from Wide Awake says, surf lives matter. That's right. Yeah, we do. Yeah, hey, us peasants, we're people too. Dang it. We want to be heard. We have Sgt Bob says, and then Senator Ted Kennedy drove his Lincoln off a bridge and Mary Joanne Kopechne drowned. No real consequences. He was part of royalty. You're right. The Kennedys are royalty here, right? Just like the Clintons are, just like the Bushes are, just like the Trumps are, just like the Bidens are. They're all royalty. The rest of us are just the little peasants. We have Wolfgang, the super chat came in from Furby Slayer, says, force the queen to give him sovereign immunity. If she does, it's basically an admission. So I say go through with the lawsuit. So I see. Yeah, so sort of just acknowledging, okay, you got him. You're immune. You don't have to comply with any of these things. You're free to go, right? You've already withdrawn from public life. We got, well, nothing else to do with you anymore, but you're not going to be charged with a crime, sovereign immunity. It's an admission without the penalty, but it's better than nothing. I understand your point there, Furby. It's a good point. We have Kenneth Fielders here, says the problem is grandfathered in practices, point the finger, push the blame, deflect the responsibility. Yeah, they do that in all parts of the world, right? All over the place. Everybody points their fingers all over the place. January 6th incident, right? DC Metro Police, it's the Capitol Police. It's the FBI. Oh, no, it's the DEA. Oh, no, it's the Sergeant at Arms of the Senate. No, in the House. Oh, no, wait. it's it's nonstop. Finger pointing all over the place because they're all incompetent and they're just trying to defray and decentralize the full quantity of that incompetence so that it doesn't fall squarely on their shoulders. They want to carry the load. And fortunately, there are many, many, many government institutions that will allow that to happen. All right, my friends, those were all of the great questions that came in on the show today. I want to give a couple quick shout outs before we wrap it up. Over on watchingthewatchers.locals.com, we've got Jack Elia, I'm Not Gas. We have, let's see here, NY Renal MD and others are chatting away over there. Let's see, we also got on YouTube, we have Stace on the Case. We have A Straight and Narrow. We have Zorro. We got Todd Hupp. We got Lady Zaga and others. Big shout outs to the super chats that came in today. Thank you so much for all of those. Very generous. Kenneth Fielders, thank you. We've got Red Devil subscribed. Furby, Wolfgang in the house. Brody Z, big shout out to Newbie. Eddie Oliver for a few of those today. Alex Bogey along with Dr. Sammy D. Thank you all so much for those super chats. And there were great questions that came over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. There's a lot of fun that's going on there in the chat, a lot of activity over there. And I want to welcome a new subscriber who just signed up and joined us on the community. Big, big welcomes to Daver SEC or Davers EC. I'm not sure what it is. Let me know if you want me to get clear on that. But Daver Sec is here. And I want to welcome you along with Shifty Shift. We got 503 Unlimited. We got Mary B 585, The Real Patriot. We have Laura SB. Shout outs to D Rodriguez. We got Wendy Deer, Stoic RD, and Daver. Thank you so much for signing up for the year, by the way. Really do appreciate that. Shout outs to everybody else who signed up last week. If you want to join us, it's $5 a month or $50 annually. You get 2 months for free if you join up that way. And I want to invite you because in about 2 weeks, we've got our locals meetup coming up on Saturday, August 28th, 2021, 7 to 8 p.m. It is a lot of fun. We get to put names to faces, get to connect with anybody. What we're doing is building a community at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And we'd love it if you joined up over there and supported us and got to stick around and meet some people, because that's what it's all about. It's about the connections. And we are grateful for you for helping us facilitate that. All right, my friends, and that is it for me for the day. I want to thank you once again for being a part of the show. We're going to be back here, same time, same place tomorrow, 4 p.m. Arizona time, 5 p.m. Mountain, 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. on the East Coast, and for that one Florida man. Everybody else, have a tremendous evening. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye. Thanks so much for watching. Before you head out, I want to just remind you that I am a criminal defense lawyer here in Scottsdale, Arizona, where my team and I, we've got a long history of helping good people facing criminal charges to find safety, clarity, and hope in their cases and beyond that in their lives. Our phone number for a free case evaluation is 480-787-0394. You can also find us online at www.rrlawaz.com. We can help with any type of criminal charge in the state of Arizona, things like DUI, drug offenses, misdemeanor offenses. And we can also help with clearing up old case records, like expunging cases or making sure that you can restore your rights so that you can vote again or possess a firearm again or apply for some other federal benefits. We can remove mugshots off the internet. Basically, anytime that you or somebody you know or love is in trouble with the law in the state of Arizona, we have an amazing team of people. We would just love the opportunity to help. And our phone number, of course, 480-787-0394. And if you don't need any legal services, that's a very good thing. But you may be interested in some informational offerings so that you are prepared if you do have to deal with the police. And of course, I want to invite you to head on over to gumroad.com/Robert Gruler. You'll notice here, I've got several different trainings that are available, including the law enforcement interaction training. This is the 1, 2, 3 rule for dealing with the police. It's one rule you need, 2 questions that the police can ask of you, and 3 responses if they ask you a problematic question. So that's available now. You can also get a load at my personal productivity system here called Existence Systems. Fun little course. And then we have here, if you're a lawyer or a legal professional, be sure to check out this program. We are meeting twice every month. Again, all of this over at gumroad.com/Robert Gruler. And if none of that sounds any good to you, well, just go ahead and give us a follow, because I'm working on some other products and some other offerings. And of course, if you have not already done so, want to invite you one more time to head on over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com. It's where you can support the show, and it's where we can connect. We've got monthly Zoom meetings and a lot of other goodies coming up. So I look forward to seeing you there. Thank you so much for watching and for all of your love and support. I will see you on the next one.